welcome. I'm Andres. This is the Baking Steel Studio. Thank you guys for coming here today for legendary English Muffin Zoom Hangout. We're gonna make English muffins from scratch. We're gonna start with the dough. I'm gonna show you how to ball it up and ferment, and then we're gonna go to our Baking Steel Mini and fry them up, because there's a secret sauce to our recipe and making Englishes really good. And I think we've got it. We can share it with you guys. And you guys, once you make these English muffins, you will not go back to store-bought. These are delicious. There's more adventure. They're healthier. There's better. Everything about them. So again, thank you for being here. I'm going to get right into making the English muffin dough for you. And then we'll get into the shaping and the ferment. We'll talk about fermentation and the quality of ingredients, etc. Then we're going to bake an English muffin, or make an English muffin on the Baking Steel Mini. And you guys can see me do it live. And then we'll answer all of your questions. So please, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat and we'll get to them. Like when we have some pauses during these class, we'll get to the questions. And if I don't get to it, just don't be afraid to type it back in and we'll get to it, because that's what we're here for you. All right, so I'm gonna, let's talk about ingredients before I even get into making this. So let's get right into the ingredients. There's flour. We're gonna use all-purpose flour. I like organic because it's cleaner. It's a better, softer. I just always go organic. All my flours, bread flour, all-purpose flour, 00 flour, you name it, I'm going organic. Just my preference. I can't taste the difference. I can feel the difference. I got salt. We have water. We have a little bit of avocado oil or clarified butter, like 20 grams. And then we have yeast, about 1.5 to 2 grams of yeast. And so I'm going to make this, and all these ingredients we're going to ship to you guys in an email with the recipe, so you'll have it all. I'm gonna do this off the top of my head, so if I do make an error, it'll be in the email, but I should get this right. I've done it enough times. So let's get right to this English muffin recipe. So I've got my digital scale here, and I've got my flour, and I have 550 grams of all-purpose flour already in my container. So I kind of zero this out. And next I'm going to add about 20 grams of sea salt. And so I just kind of dump this in to my container. Once I hit 20, obviously I'm going to take my whisk and just whisk the salt around. I can give these bowls a great, because I can give a little shake too, kind of helps. The idea of whisking is I don't want my yeast and my salt to come in direct contact with each other, because it can kill off that yeast a little bit. So I keep them separate, all my ingredients. Sugar, there's a button called TARE on my scale. You can see it right here, TARE. And what that does is when I hit that button, it basically goes back down to 0 on my scale. So I can start fresh with 20 grams of, this is like organic cane sugar. And because we're only fermenting this dough overnight, I like to give it a little bit of a boost with a little bit of sugar. And so I'm gonna whisk that around, give it a little shake. Just like this, right? Boom. And next I'm gonna add my yeast. And now for yeast, let's go to this. We have a micro scale. This scale will measure to 1/100th of a gram. You can see I'm using Fleshman's active dry yeast. I put my cap on there, I zero it out, and I add in 1.5 grams of yeast. You can see it's not a lot. That's 1.44, close enough. I'll show you a scale in my hand, about the size of a quarter, right? I can put my micro scale away, with my big scale back to the loop, dump my yeast in, and then whisk. And I give it a little shake and mix it again. Super easy. Scale of 1 to 10. This is like a 3, maybe a 2, maybe even a 1. As long as you can count, that's it. All right, now I'm gonna zero out again. I'm gonna add water, and I add about 350 grams to 400 grams of water. It's about the recipe calls for 350. I can add a little bit more if I want to have a little bit more nooks and crannies. It's a personal preference. The problem when you add too much water, the dough becomes super sticky and more difficult to work with. Actually, go a little bit more than that. Go. One last touch. Now I can put my scale away. I can grab my dough scraper. Again, this is just similar to our pizza dough. It's almost identical. I just kind of whisk this around now. I want that water to absorb into the flour before I start really getting my hands dirty. You can see it's starting to form one large mass. Now what I'll do, I'm going to take one of my hands and I'll get one of my hands dirty, right? I'm not sure which one, but the additional here. And now what I can do is just kind of lightly press this dough out, just like this. Turn it over, and just again, I'm just wiping. I'm forming one large ball, one large mass, and I'm also making sure there's no dry clumps of flour. Unlike our pancakes, where we like sometimes we like the chunks in there, right? We don't want the glutens to develop, but in our breads and our pizza doughs, and we do want the glutens to develop. So we kind of need a little bit here till it forms one large mass. And I do this for about 2 or 3 minutes. I'm not going to bore you guys. Let's just say that's one large mass. You can see it's getting there, right? I might even, if I'm going to be working again on this, I might take this out, clean out my bowl, and just put my dough back in. Again, that's just a personal preference. Or if I have 2 bowls, I'll just shift this into a cleaner one and then rinse this one out so it's ready to go again. But that's really my my dough. So let's take a pause and maybe we can answer some questions for you guys. Let's see. Boom. Boom. So there's my my dough. Container, right? I put this. I'm just gonna rinse off my hands really quick. One hand's clean, one hand's dirty. That's my secret, right? So if my phone rang or something, I could always use this finger to answer or to do whatever task I have in front of me. But I always like to keep one hand, if I can, clean, and one hand ready to rock and move. So then that's it for my dough. Literally, like I made this. So I did this yesterday, and I made we ferment our English muffins at room temperature for 24 hours. That's it. So I'm gonna cover this up. Okay. I can add, one ingredient I'm missing out on today, and I'm gonna tell you why, but I can add oil. We like 20 grams of avocado oil or clarified butter right back into this mixture. After I knead it like I just did, I will now add the oil in. Today, I'm trying this in fact, I made a batch yesterday without oil, and it was an accident. So today, I'm just trying the recipe without the oil to see if I can tell the difference. More importantly, when I give these to my kids later, to see if they can tell the difference. So the oil, again, plays a role. It softens those glutens a little bit when I bite into it because it's like lubes up those gluten strands, which is really nice and it's in our recipe. However, by accident, I left it out yesterday. So I'm going to make another batch without just to see if I like it. So after 24 hours, the day, so tomorrow morning, right? Or today, I came in this morning because I already had a batch of dough and I made English muffin balls. And those are very similar to pizza dough balls. What we're going to do is let those proof for 3 or 4 hours before we bake them off. So I'm going to show you how I make a dough ball. So stay with me. This. I'm going to show you how I do this. English muffin balls. So I'll take a little bit of semolina flour, put it down, right? I'll take my dough. Here's a 95 gram portion. It's just the size I like of the dough that I made yesterday. And I'm just gonna kind of coat it lightly in the semolina flour, right? And I'm gonna take my hand and just kind of do this rolling technique like this and cupping. I'm kind of cupping my hand and rolling at the same time. You can see how I'm like kind of cupping it like this and rolling. And it gets sticky underneath there, right? So I can just, again, a little bit of semolina flour. You can even use table flour if you'd like. And that's it. So I just kind of do this cupping motion and press. I'm pressing down, giving a little bit of force. You can see it's formed a ball. Isn't that amazing? Right? So let's go to this. I've got this really nice ball here. And I'm gonna let these dough balls, I'm gonna put them back in my dough container. I have more containers. I like the dough containers because they cover and they keep it airtight. I'm gonna coat this a little bit with semolina flour on top, like our English muffins. I'm gonna let this dough ball rest for about 3 to 4 hours to final proof. The dough's sticky, so be conscious of that, be mindful. I like to, I combat that stickiness with a little bit of semolina flour in my hands. If the dough starts to stick to my hands, a little bit more semolina flour. Don't be afraid to wash your hands in between to keep them clean, because you don't want that dough to stick to your hand as you're doing that cupping. Now, if I can't do a cup for some reason, I can also just take this dough, okay, and just kind of fold it. Let me go back down, top down here. This is like plan B if that's not working for you. Just take the dough and like fold it into the center and just keep folding each corner into the center like this. And I'm basically doing the same thing as I'm massaging it. I'm crossing over the glutens, right? I'm working it a little bit, massaging it. I'm still making a ball, right? Folding it into itself, which is essentially the same thing as making our dough balls. I'm not being super aggressive here. Let's keep pressing it. I grab a corner, go right into the center again. I'm turning it as I go. And you can see it's forming a nice smooth ball. I'll put that smooth side in my palm and I'll just kind of lightly pinch this now. And I got the same result as doing like the ball technique. In fact, you might even argue this is a little bit nicer. It looks a little better because it's got a smooth top to it. This is going to rest now for about, that's the dough ball. So I made the dough balls, and now I'm gonna let them rest for about 3 hours. Hope you guys have time. And we're gonna bake one on the baking steel mini. So before we do that, now I made some dough balls earlier this morning at like 8:39, so they're ready to fry. So I'm gonna cook them on the griddle in just a few minutes. So first, let me answer any questions you guys might have. You guys have any questions? Just throw them in the chat there. My wife put me up to this. Can I use gluten-free flour? That's a really great question. Yes, you can. However, I have not tested. So I do not know how everything will react to the gluten-free flour. I don't know if it's a 1-for-1 swap out or not. That might require some research. Sorry, I couldn't be more helpful on that one. Where do you proof them for 3 hours? In a bowl or on a tray? Great question. I proofed mine in my dough tray here, like this. I have another one over here that's been proofing. I like it because it's got a lid to it, so it makes it airtight. If I don't have a dough container, a sheet tray is fine. Just sprinkle some semolina flour underneath, and then sprinkle some semolina flour on top. And then when you cover it with plastic wrap, it won't stick. The dough won't stick to the plastic wrap because you have some semolina flour as a barrier to protect, so it won't stick. After you knead the dough is when I would add, so after I knead the dough is when I would add the oil. Yes, my dough is kneaded after 2 or 3 minutes of kneading it, making one big mass. Now I can add some fat in, and for this we like avocado oil. It's just a nice neutral oil. We add about 20 grams in, and we just knead it in there for another minute. Let that oil kind of get inside that dough. I hope that answers that. Have you made these using sourdough? Hey, Marie, yes, great question. 100% love the sourdough. Yes, when I'm making for round numbers, if I'm putting in 500 grams of flour, I will remove 50 grams of I'm sorry, it's 500 grams of flour and 350 grams of water. So I will remove 50%, 50 grams of water and 50 grams of flour out of the recipe and add in 100 grams of starter, which is 20% of fresh starter into my dough mixture. And that seems to do the trick. A lively starter, 20 grams, 100 grams, 20%. That really does a nice job. Naturally leavened English muffins. Delicious. All right. So that's questions. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to take you over to the oven in a second. And you guys can see how I go about making the English. So let's, on top of my electric stove, I have my baking steel mini griddle here. And I have some clarified ghee, here's some clarified butter, okay? And I've got my baking steel preheating at about 300 degrees. I'm just gonna put some butter down. This is clarified, so it has a higher smoke point than typical butter, okay? I put a good amount down. It's about 300 degrees, so it's not like ripping hot. It's nice and hot. I'm gonna take an English muffin that I had balled up already. I'm gonna place it down, face down, right into the butter. It's probably, my IR gun went dead this morning. The battery died. So I'm kind of doing this by experience. I want this griddle to be about 300 to 325 degrees. I can peek underneath here, right, to see the gauge, but I've got a good handle on it. The butter's gonna burn at like 500 degrees. So I'm kind of below that point. I can tell it's not smoking. So I'm gonna put the timer on for 5 minutes. I cook these for 5 minutes on each side. And we fry them in the oil versus baking them in the oven. We find that we fry them, it does a really nice texture to the English muffins. I made one here earlier. This is 5 minutes on each side. You can see the thickness here. Boom, right? And that's our English muffin. It's really amazing. And this cooked for like literally 10 minutes. Feels nice and light. I'm going to open this up in just a second for you. So you can take a peek at the nooks and the crannies. Sourdough also applied to other recipes like pizza. Yes, yes, Vicky, great question. Does the recipe for sourdough, like English muffins, apply to pizza? Yes, I literally, if I'm making a new recipe, I will add in 20% starter into my my recipe. I'll remove equal parts flour and water to get there, because I know my starter typically is 100% hydrated because it's equal parts of flour and water. So again, I substitute 20% in and remove 50 and 50. Can you use cast iron pan to fry? Oh, yes, of course. I am using the baking steel mini here on an electric stovetop. If I don't have a baking steel, yes, I can use a cast iron pan is great. In fact, make sure you have enough, butter on the bottom or clarified butter or avocado oil. Those are our recommendations, and that's what I would do. That looks great. I got it up about the right temperature in there. I can tell by, I'm peeking at the bottom. You can see, right? Just like this. Cool. Do you ship your pizza dough? What's up, Nancy? Are you in Michigan by any chance? If you're in Michigan, we can make something happen. Funny enough, we used to ship pizza dough. It just became very labor intensive. It's very difficult to do. So we kind of paused. We don't really have the space for it. My baking stone, my steel baking stone does not have a rim to catch oil. Do I just be careful? Hey, George, yes. I'm using the griddle here. Around the griddle, we got a perimeter carved out of the steel to capture the butter, the fats, the oils, etc. If you don't have those, place your baking steel on top of your stove top. Just be mindful to keep the oils in the center, right? Don't let it go too far off the edges. So this, you're not gonna have as much surface area as the like the original would be. Just keep your focus on the center of it, and yes, it'll be fine. I've done it before. Or you can even do it on the grill too. Hey, Nancy, you live in Situate. Wow, we were in Cohasset, so we were close by, but we moved. We're in Grand Rapids now. Our old test kitchen is that. I don't know if did you ever come to this the old test kitchen? We did live classes there too. Oh, geez, and I don't see a picture, but that's great. We don't have the dough anymore. You have to come out to Grand Rapids for that. If doing sourdough addition, do you alter yeast amount? If I'm going to do sourdough, I am not going to do any yeast at all. I'll just substitute in my sourdough into the recipe. If I'm doing, multiple batches, I mean, I still would just use the sourdough. It's fine. I think it works great. You can cheat and maybe add a little bit of yeast if you like to, but I don't think you would need to. If your sourdough is lively, your starter is lively when you're using it, it should be great. I hope that answers that. We'll check this English muffin in a minute, and then we're going to open this one up too for you. Be great. Any other questions, you guys? That's the 1 minute timer. That'll be 4 minutes. So it'll be 5 minutes total in just a minute. Get my knife ready to cut into our English muffin here. I have only used the baking stone or baking steel in the oven. Can I use over gas burners? Yeah, George, absolutely. In fact, gas burners are great. Really nice way to control that heat. As you can see, I'm using an electric stovetop here, and I actually quite like it. It's amazing. I've really learned to dial it in. I've learned the rhythm of this oven and how to get this griddle to about 300 degrees without an infrared gun, just by practice. But gas, no problem, totally. Do you have a gram weight for the dough ball? Yes, Vicky, this was 95 grams. 95 grams. I figure like that's like a good amount. It's a good size English muffin. Reminds me of Thomas's, but a little thicker, right? Got a little bit more dough. All right, let's take a peek, and I'll get to questions in a second. Let's take a peek at the English muffin on the stovetop. I'm going to flip it over so you guys can see what I'm doing. Just turn this timer on. All right, so now you can see it's been 5 minutes. I'm going to take my spatula, just kind of flip it over. Really like, I give it a little bit of a pat, kind of square it up. Isn't that gorgeous? Isn't that beautiful? Here's the English muffin I made earlier today. And I'm going to slice this one open so you guys can take a peek inside. I just kind of I use a serrated knife, just kind of go around the outside, probably about a quarter of an inch or so. I keep going. Now I'll take my hands and I'll kind of pop it open. Oh man, it looks good. Oh yes, look at those nooks and crannies. Aren't they beautiful? Amazing, right? Look at that, like gorgeous. That's 5 minutes on each side. Again, they look amazing. This one's on 5 minutes now. We put the timer back on. I don't forget. So let's go back, let that one finish. Back to this one. See these, the nooks and the crannies, they look amazing. I will butter this up, toast it up, give it a sample. Then I'll take them home for my kids and they will devour them. They love them. Francine, great question. It's funny when when we were making this recipe, I think it was for our book a few years back. We made so many English muffins and I was using a fork because everyone says to use a fork. You stick your fork in, you pry it. I found that what happened was I'd go too deep with my fork and I wouldn't get the same effect with the nooks and the crannies. I find like so I kind of cut about a quarter inch in around the entire perimeter. Then I just peel it open and it allows like the nooks and the crannies to develop a little better that way versus sticking a fork all the way in it and prying it apart, if you will, like this. So I kind of pull it apart. It seems to really help with those nooks and crannies. Anybody else have a question I can help answer? Are you guys going to try these out now? Anybody, raise your hand if you're gonna try to make these English muffins. You've got to. You really have to. They're so easy, so fun. They're so great. And tag us on Instagram if you make them, if you're on Instagram or Facebook, and just tag us Baking Steel legendary English muffins, and we'll repost them because people want to see your creations. That would be incredible. And if you have any questions in the interim, literally just give me an email, Andres@BakingSteel, and let me know if you're having any problems, and I'll help you make these legendary. They're so good. I can't recommend them enough. Take an adventure. Get out of your comfort zone. You got this, okay? Thank you guys for being here. Grateful. We'll see you in a couple of weeks for another pizza hangout. Oh, here we go. Should you gas off the muffins before cutting into them? Or can you eat right off the griddle? Oh, that's a great question. I let these cool to room temp because technically I cooked them for about 5 or 6 minutes. They could go a little bit like 6 to 6.5 minutes. So I pull them off. They're still cooking them. The carryover cooking is happening. So I let them sit and cool before I break them open. You guys are amazing. How is it without using the oil? So Marie, so far the verdict is really nice. I'm going to toast this up and give it an official taste and see if I like the texture. It feels really good though. I'm gonna let my real test will be the kids later on tonight. You guys are amazing. Thank you guys. Anytime. See you in a couple of weeks. See you soon. Grateful for all of you. Bye. You're welcome. Thank you, Marie.